Welcome to part 2 of our Altea Region, a Fakemon region based on the lost city of Atlantis and all things mythological. Now, if you haven't seen part 1 yet, I will link it down in the description for you to go and check that out. And I'll also link the Instagram for Pierrickachu, who is the artist today. We're going to get right into it and jump into the fossil Pokemon for the region. Now, there are 3 fossils, and they're kind of different to our normal fossil Pokemon that we'll see. Instead of all having a rock typing, they all have a dragon typing, and all 3 are a 3-stage evolution. They're also heavily Japanese inspired, which we'll see. The first one is Gekoppa, which is a dragon and steel type Pokemon, which looks like a very cute little gecko at the moment. I do love the black coloring, but that yellow is very stark on its head there. It evolves into Chrysalloy, which is kind of like a cocoon Pokemon, which we're going to see in all 3 of these stages here. The reason the artist did this was to kind of hide what its final evolution is going to look like. Now, our final evolution is a huge dragon in Mazingon. Now, this is inspired by those giant Japanese robots, kind of like a Mechagodzilla kind of look. I love that it stays on all 4s, definitely looking a lot like a dragon rather than a robot here. We can see those wings look quite rigid, but I love those giant, almost like a crown on top of its head there, that golden crown. Next is Nymphalion, which is now a dragon and fairy type Pokemon. So a very different vibe here, a very different look. The coloring definitely makes it look kind of feminine. Almost kind of gives me Lilo and Stitch vibes, I think, in a way. Again, we've got our sort of cocoon kind of Pokemon here in Pixie Pod. Definitely just looks like the little ball, but we can see little tiny wings there. Now, its final evolution is Skydew. So again, looking very, very draconic, but this is also based on Mothra as well. We can see those giant wings that it's got. It's got some cloudy parts on the neck there, but again, looks very feminine. I think the wings, even like the eyelashes. And then our third option, you can only choose one if you're playing this game, but the third option is Ghost Type, which is a dragon and ghost type Pokemon. Now, I love the spectral flame look around the neck, but also like the spikes on the back as well. But you can see that the face of the Pokemon actually has a Japanese flag in it. That white background with the big red circle in the middle of it, like the Japanese flag. Evolving into Phantomorph. So even though it's kind of like that cocoon-esque kind of Pokemon, does look very different, which I'm glad that they don't look just like straight like cocoons. But then its final evolution is Wraithzilla. Now, this is based on sort of like a ghostly form of Godzilla. We can see it is bipedal, definitely got that Godzilla kind of look, but the spectral elements all off the back and on the head, definitely like what we saw in the first evolution. Then next we have Chlorodile, which is a grass and poison type and is based on a crocodile. Has that very long elongated snout like a crocodile would have, but looks kind of shy. I love that it's got a giant leaf that's kind of like a scarf though, which is really interesting. Evolving into Alligator. I love how it's got aloe in the name. I think that works out very, very nicely. Different kind of vibe here. The leaf is almost kind of like a mohawk on its head, which I think is showing that sort of adolescence, which we see in a lot of middle evolutions. But I love the final evolution in Croconite. Looks like an absolute beast of a Pokemon. Looking very angry and very muscly. And we can see those purple leaves on the back. Now, that's actually based on the Aconite flower, which gives it that coloring. Then next we have Palumi, which is a water and electric type Pokemon. Now, this combines a water nymph, but with an anglerfish as well. We can see that big bright bulb that we have on the top of their head. But it also kind of looks alien-esque in a way. I think it's those big dark eyes that it has, but I think this looks very cute. It evolves into Thalumen, which I think is looking a little bit more animal-esque now. Not so much of an alien. Definitely looks a bit more like some kind of creature. I do love that. Almost looks kind of shy. I think it's the way its hands are. It does look kind of shy. But its final evolution looks amazing. Luminizon, I could definitely see this looking like a pseudo-legendary, but it's not in this region. It also looks like it's got war paint all over its body with those electric yellow stripes all over the blue. Then next we have Baboon, which is a fighting and water type Pokemon. Obviously based on a baboon, but I love how it's got a starfish over its nose. And if you look closely at the feet, they look like they're webbed feet as well for swimming. It evolves into Poseidape, so obviously getting much bigger now. Definitely looks very angry, like a baboon would, I think. But it's got a really cool dorsal fin on its back. Its front paws are webbed, obviously for swimming. It's got like a bit of a frill around its neck. So I think all these aquatic elements with a baboon is a really interesting idea, but it's also got Poseidon in the name as well. Then next in your journey, you come across the Elder Shrine. And within the Elder Shrine are a lot of evolutions, but they're quite different to the evolutions that we traditionally know. Of course, first we need our Altean Eevee, which is a ground and fairy type Pokemon. Very different to the normal type that we would have, and all these evolutions are going to be a dual typing as well. First is Anemon, which is a poison and water type Pokemon. This is based on a sea anemone. Those long spiky tendrils that make up the ears definitely remind me of Marini. And I think the little spiky club look on the end of the tail is quite cool too. Then next is Poison, which is a poison and ground type. Now this is looking a lot like a cobra. It almost looks like it's got scales on the head and throughout the body and tail as well. And almost like a bit of a scorpion sting at the end there. Then Ninjaon is a fighting and dark type Pokemon, obviously based on a ninja. It looks like a kunai or some kind of ninja weaponry at the tail there, which is really cool. And looks like it's got those fighting straps around the legs for it too. And then Brawleon is a fighting and steel type Pokemon. This is actually inspired by Chun-Li from Street Fighter. But that very gothic look, like the spiky wristbands around all of the paws and at the base of the tail as well, is really cool. Strateon is our flying and ice type Pokemon, obviously inspired by clouds. The clouds are all over the tail and the body as well, but I love like the big wing look. And then Seraphon is a flying and fairy type Pokemon, similar to the previous one, but this is more so inspired by angels. I love the coloring in the wings there. I think it looks really, really nice. Then next we have Mothyon, a bug and psychic type Pokemon, obviously inspired by a moth. Instead of having wings on its body, its massive ears look like they turn into wings, but it's also got antennas as well. And then Hotteon, the bug and flying type Pokemon, clearly based on a bee. You can definitely see that within the coloring. I love the giant stripy tail, looks like the abdomen of the bee as well with that stinger at the end. And then Dracuon, a dragon and water type Pokemon. This is based off Haku from Spirited Away, and I love Haku. I think the inspiration is very cool, and I think the coloring matches Haku perfectly. And then Wyveon is a dragon and fire type Pokemon, so now it's like a fire dragon inspiration. Similar kind of design to the previous one, but now a fire element. Crystalleon is a rock and dark type Pokemon based off a rock geode. You can see the very, very spiky look, almost like an obsidian look over the tail, the back of the legs, and like a bit of a mane around of it as well. Very small touch, but that sparkly look on the tips of those rocks is a really cool addition. Lithion is the rock and ground type, so compared to our other one, which was very sharp and jagged and obsidian-like, this is more of like a rocky kind of look here with a massive rocky mace for its tail, which is really cool. Anubion is a ghost and dark type, and I love the skeleton look here. The skull, the eyes in particular look really nice, and that spectral flame on the tip of a very long tail is really interesting too. This is based on Anubis, which I think we can definitely see in those long ears that it has. And then the other ghost one is Forceon. This is a ghost and normal type now. That massive chain with a duskull on the end of the scythe is really cool. And this is based off the myth of Anku. So having that massive cloak or sheet covering most of its body really is really cool. And you can see the tail and the paw underneath is actually quite different to the exterior. Next, Mjolnir is still an electric type Pokemon. I think this is very clearly based off Thor and Mjolnir. Those little shields over the legs, but that lightning crackling off the body, I think is my favorite element, coming off the eyes as well. But then I also love that we have another Nordic inspiration here in Valkyrion, obviously based on a Valkyrie, and this is a steel and ice type Pokemon now. Definitely looks like a Valkyrie with almost like that armor helmet over the face, but the end of the tail is quite different with like an icicle kind of look. Now, Badia, I think is very cute as a normal and grass type Pokemon, obviously based on a deer, but I love that the ears almost look like little beads about to sprout. Now, this actually has a split evolution. First is Stagheist, which is a ghost and grass type Pokemon. The eyes look very creepy, and I love that kind of look there. Definitely has like an undead kind of look. And those long branches for antlers definitely complete the look. I think this is a really creative design. And then there's a bit of an opposite to that one. This is Elctrasil, the fairy and grass type Pokemon. Obviously looking a lot more bushy and more flowery as well. This is actually based on Yggdrasil, the world tree from Nordic mythology. Then next, Rock Kitty is a normal and rock type Pokemon. Now this is based on those cat or lion statues that you would see outside buildings to protect them and guard them. But I love the diamondy kind of look it has for whiskers and on its head as well. Now this also has a split evolution based on whether it is male or female. First, the female version is Opalix, which is now a rock and psychic type Pokemon. Doesn't look so jagged and rocky anymore. Definitely looks a lot more elegant. But the coloring and the stripes along the back, I think look really nice. And then if it is a male, it evolves into Fulgurance, which is definitely looking a little bit more rocky, I would say, compared to the female version. I think it's within the coloring, but it does kind of look a little bit more jagged. You can see like the whiskers and on the head. Then next is Venoma, which is a normal and poison type Pokemon, based on a dog, of course, but it's also inspired by Bulbasaur. It's got a massive poisonous bulb on its back, which is like bigger than the whole rest of the body, really. It evolves into Myo-Coyote, so now it's based on a coyote, of course. That massive bulb has now split into several smaller mushrooms instead. Definitely looking very poisonous though with those mushrooms, but also that skull patch on the back leg there. Then another Altean form is Altean Kabuto, which is a pure dark type Pokemon. Now this is based on a Kabuto, which as well as the Pokemon is also the name of a Japanese samurai helmet. So we're going to see that in this this line as it evolves. Definitely looks very dark and mysterious there. Those hidden eyes underneath the shell are really cool. Now instead of evolving into Kabutops, who evolves into Kabuto, so it's now a dark and bug type Pokemon. I feel the body shape is still the same as Kabutops, but obviously instead of those massive blades on its arms, this seems to have massive claws on the end of its arms as well, and its arms are looking a lot thicker as well. And now it actually has a third evolution in Ronin sex. So Ronin is the name of a samurai that has no lord or master. So he's very solitary. And we can see the whole body shape of those Pokemon is completely different. Their head has now become much smaller, but the body and the arms in particular have become much, much larger. And it's got some big wings on it as well. It has got that bug typing. Then next we have Hirudeon, which has a male and a female counterpart. So this is just like Nidoran, except Nidoran is obviously the one typing. Here we have the male is fire typing and the female is water typing. Now these are only a 2-stage evolution, so the male obviously evolves into Volking, which is now a steel and fire type Pokemon. This is definitely looking a lot like a dinosaur, but I love the massive horn, but also those flames spreading out of those holes along the back there is really cool. The coloring on the look on the head almost looks like a helmet, which we can also kind of see in the female version as well. So Sunaqueen is a steel and water type Pokemon. Instead of a big horn, it's got a big spout on the end of its head. But we can see it's got like geysers or spouts all along the body. It's got a big dorsal fin on its back, but also got a big dolphin-like or mermaid tail as well. Both the male and the female evolutions look amazing. It's hard for me to pick between the two. And then another Altean version is Altean Psyduck, also known as Kenduck, and this is a pure fighting type. Now this is based on Kendo. We can see it's got that Kendo outfit on and the sword as well. It has a new evolution now in Bushiduck, which is definitely following that Kendo kind of look. The coloring, but also that massive sword that it's got, but even just that kind of demeanor that it has. Then next I want to show you the Proto-Gauntlet, which is introduced as the gimmick of the region, which is proto-evolution. Now the Proto-Gauntlet is charged with chaotic energy, and if you use your Proto-Gauntlets on a few selected Pokemon, it can have a new Proto-Evolution. Now this adds the Chaos tag to the Pokemon, but it also changes the look of the Pokemon, and of course makes it a lot more powerful. So I'm going to show you a lot of these Proto-Evolution Pokemon that you can see throughout the entire region. And while we're having a look at these, I also want to remind you to check out Pierrickachu, who is the artist of this region. Their information is down in the description below, so you can go and check them out. Now I also want to give you a bit of a quick slideshow, I guess, of a lot of the gym leaders that we're going to see in the region. Now there are 8 gym leaders in the region, but they're actually called pillars, and I think every single design here for the gym leader looks phenomenal. And I also wanted to show you a bit of their team as well that they can use. And also, while you're at it, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel if you're new. I cover a lot of Fakemon regions with inspirations from all around the world. So if you want to see the next one that's going to be coming up, make sure you subscribe. Now, throughout this region, you're going to encounter similar to boss battles along the way. So I kind of see it like Legends Arceus, how you verse like a boss battle. And all of these Pokemon are experimental Pokemon with specific code names. So our first one is Emperor. So Emperor is a steel and fire type Pokemon. You can see it's got that Chaos tag as well. So it is a proto Pokemon, which means it is extra strong. This Pokemon looks like an absolute beast. I love the flame tail, the spiky cuffs along the tail. Almost got like a Zacian Zamazenta kind of look in the face, I think, with a massive mane as well. Now, the next 3 experiments are actually heavily based on Mewtwo, but with other elements as well. So first is Primeon, which is a pure psychic type Pokemon, obviously based on the Eeveelutions as well as Mewtwo as well. You can see the coloring, the long tail, but also like the demeanor that it has is a lot like Mewtwo. The next one, Masamune, is actually quite different. Definitely looks very angry, but also very rigid. We can see spikes all along its body, but massive swords for arms. Now, the 4th out of these 5 codename Pokemon, but the last one that's inspired by Mewtwo, is Obsidian, which is a psychic type Pokemon. This one is intense. I think those eyes definitely give it very much an alien feel to it. And those massive 3 prongs on the top of its head are kind of like a crown. Now, the 5th one is actually quite different, and I know that it was a late addition to this Pokedex. This is called Soldierine, and it is a dark type Pokemon. Now, this is actually based on James Earl Jones, who had recently passed away, and the name Soldierine is an anagram of Earl Jones. Now, the best part about this Pokemon is it combines 2 main characters of James Earl Jones. This combines Mufasa with Darth Vader. Obviously, mainly based on a lion, but it's also got a big mask and that dark coloring all over it to give it that Darth Vader kind of look. I think this is a great tribute to James Earl Jones and a really cool looking Pokemon. Okay, after facing off against those bosses, there's a few more Pokemon to get to until we get to the legendaries of the region. So next is Altea and Ghastly, which is a ghost and ice type Pokemon. Looking kind of like a spiky, icy snowball, I think, but still has those ghastly kind of wisps coming off it as well. It has a new evolution in Froster, which definitely looks a lot like a Haunter, but of course those spiky ice shards coming off it is a bit of a different vibe. And then lastly evolves into Ganglace, which again looks a lot like a Gengar. But I love how it's got like thin, icy arms. It's even holding one of the Ghastlies as well, almost like a spiky snowball. Then next is Icy Claw, the flying and ice type Pokemon, and I love this design. I think this looks so cute. This is of course based on a snowy owl. It evolves into Blizzard, which has a massive icy crown on the head, which I think looks really interesting. It definitely looks very regal and does not look like a Pokemon you want to mess with. I think those red piercing eyes are a really cool touch amongst the blue of the whole body there. Then next we have Manticore, which is an ice and poison type Pokemon. Now this line is based on the Manticore. Evolves into Frostycore. So it has those elements of a whole bunch of different creatures merged into one, but it's definitely more of a slender design compared to a Manticore. It doesn't have that massive mane that a Manticore would have, but still has that spiky venomous tail. Then next we have Tentacle, which is a water and psychic type Pokemon. Now it looks a lot like a Tentacle, particularly in the coloring, but it's actually quite different. I think again it has a very alien kind of look. I think it's those large eyes that it has. And I wouldn't think a Tentacle kind of Pokemon would look cute, but I think this looks very cute. Evolves into Tentacoon, which is kind of like a cocoon Pokemon that we may see in some pseudo-legendaries like Pupitar, for example. But I love that the tentacles are all wrapped up around the Pokemon to protect it. Now, I absolutely love its final evolution in Tentalord. This is based on Cthulhu. I think it definitely has a Cthulhu-based presence. Those tentacles coming off the back, the red orbs all over its body, the sharp claws that are webbed, and just the face and the look in the eyes look very, very menacing. And then next we have Vampiny, which is a flying and dark type Pokemon, obviously based on a bat, but has a big crescent moon over its body, which is really cool. And that evolves into Noctacular, which is now based on Man-Bat from the Batman series. But that massive like mane of hair down to almost like a spiky tail at the bottom there is really cool. Now, there are 3 legendary Pokemon within the region. We have our 2 box art legendaries and then our main legendary afterwards. Now, our 2 box art legendaries look very similar, and that's because they're actually twins. So the first one for Pokemondex is Marianthros, which is a dragon and water type Pokemon. Ma in the name meaning the sea, and this Pokemon definitely looks very ocean inspired. Of course the coloring, but even like the fins and the flippers along the whole body as well, which altogether works perfectly for a region based on Atlantis. The twin to that is Terravoltsin, which is a dragon and flying type Pokemon. Obviously within the coloring itself, it is like the opposite. Lots of reds and oranges and pinks in this design. So it's got Terra meaning ground in it. So we've got our land and our sea here. And then our final legendary for the region, which has a lot to do with the storyline for the game, is Obsidious. Now this doesn't even have a typing, it just has the chaos tag, which we saw in our proto-evolutions as well. Now the history behind this Pokemon as well as the design of it is heavily inspired by Arceus. So it definitely looks like a dark version of Arceus, and we can see in the description here, if Arceus represents creation and divine light, the opposite of that is Obsidious, which represents destruction and chaos. A really interesting design, but I think the whole storyline that goes with it, especially matching with Arceus, is just perfect. It makes for a really interesting storyline and what would be a very interesting game. What a fantastic region. Let me know down in the comments what your favorite Pokemon are. My favorites are Waxcavator, Marosaur, Tentalord, and Blizzard. All of those designs are phenomenal. If you haven't yet, make sure to check out part 1 of the region, and I'll see you in the next video. Cheers.